First of all, thank you, Center of Bhutan Studies and GNH for having me here. And I extend my namaskar to the venerables, scholars, friends, Dharma brothers and sisters. Now, I had a small accident today morning, and the drops of blood on my hand again reminded me that this pain, this blood, and the suffering does not discriminate with gender, even does not the cremation fires. And they are perfectly non-discriminate, these things. And so again the question arises that why we need to do this topic, especially me, because having paid my again homage to the 17 Nalanda masters coming from Nalanda University, I still now have a curiosity that where are the nuns or who may have reached the height of being an acharya. I haven't got any answer. I also keep on telling that in my university. So, why we need to celebrate the exceptional wisdom of these two, especially Bhikkhunis. I will refer to Bhikkhuni Samyutta, part of the Samyutta Nikaya. I will refer to Bhikkhuni Vijaya and Bhikkhuni Soma specifically on their interaction with the evil king Mara. Like the evil king Mara tries to taunt, harass, and question the potential of understanding of these two bhikkhunis regarding their understanding of the Dhamma of the Buddha. Now, these two bhikkhunis gives a befitting reply and in a much tactful manner, negating forms and moving towards giving us a view of that there is not even a false view, we should reject false view, there is nothing form, and there is also no right view because saying something right view is also an attachment somehow. So the answer is very tactful and it gives us a flavor of emptiness. However, saying that, I would also mention that please do not let's equate this emptiness to the Shunyata concept developed by Acharya Sri Nagarjuna and the later developments of Yogacara and Madhyamika. So having said that, I start discussing my paper that first of all, there are hardly any cases or rare cases where a bhikkhuni gives a teaching, or even when the sutta starts, it starts with ehi bhikkhu. That can also be argued that it may refer to both the bhikkhus and the bhikkhunis. And also, there are hardly rare cases where the Buddha himself directly gives a teaching to a bhikkhuni. The question arises, from where they got this depth realization, who taught them, and how this happened. To my belief, they exactly followed the path of the Buddha, the first-hand experiences. You see most of the suttas, like being addressed to maybe Sariputta or Moggallana, and having been acknowledged by the Buddha himself, the Agga Savikas, that means the foremost nuns, like the Bhikshuni Khema, Bhikshuni Upallavana, the most wise, we really do not find such instances where teaching to the public has been given by them and what they have told. So, we mostly found these experiences regarding the teachings of the nuns in forms of verses, but it can be again debated in the scholarly world that whether it's a teaching or just a testimony. And also, I do not think that Therigatha is empowering because mostly the tune is like, there was lust, I got the Dhamma, and then I got cured. So I do not think women ever would talk like that. So partly maybe the editing of the text much later on having a dyadic tune and maybe to some extent a product of the male voice. So having said that, I will refer to that again, this dyadic tone is observed in the Anguttara Nikaya, where initially the Buddha praises the bhikkhunis, but when it comes to the woman that the text mentions, the woman associated in two things like lust and too full of envy, anger, misery, and lack of wisdom, and there a very derogatory term is used that is black serpent. And again, in the same text, like Anguttara Nikaya, it talks about 13 Agga Savikas. So I am quite very confused at how can a same text sound like this? What is this dyadic tune all about? Then, the plethora of questions and curiosity comes up that in what manner a bhikkhuni is different from a woman, because usually the bhikkhuni gets a much positive image in the text as she has received the dharma, rather than this negative portrayal is attributed to women. So this question comes up that what is then the identity of a bhikkhuni? Or talking about Mara, then who is this Mara? Is this the society trying to question the wisdom of a woman? And why she needs to validate every time? Why her wisdom is always put to test of the society? Or the Mara can be very much the inner defilement, because both these two bhikkhunis, they sit under the tree, they are sitting in like meditative equipoise. Like Mara may be actually the inner insecurities, the inner defilements, and the canopy of the tree may be the thinking. It is very much natural on a human mind, even I hope being monastic or lay, insecurities or questions may arise. And that's the much more empowering thing that they are trying to answer themselves. That is a view. Or according to one of my teacher, Alice Collett, like in her paper, she represents the Mara as the male machismo, which tries to question the female potential. So I particularly referred to the befitting reply on of the Mara, of the two bhikshunis given to Mara. And there are 10 brief suttas in the Bhikkhuni Samyutta, and they illuminate us, in fact, on the Buddha's teaching of the illusion of form, and hints us that earlier forms of emptiness and non-duality, and there is actually biology cannot determine the awakening, or it cannot ever be trapped in the illusions of gender or biology. So, in given context, I try to explain the context of shunyata not as a negation of phenomenon as advocated by Acharya Sri Nagarjuna, but in the way we need to churn our minds to think that what is the right definition of no self, and how can be this perceived when we connect to Mara as mere inner self-doubt or defilement, and the bhikkhunis themselves in meditative equipoise pondering upon going beyond the human factors and attaining an unbiased genderless mind state beyond the notion of male, female, or any biology-based discriminations. And to some extent, the early Buddhism have been accused of having a misogynic tune. I will refer particularly now to the stanza of Bhikkhuni Vijaya, SN 5, that means Samyutta Nikaya 5.4, where Mara tries to terrify and harass her, and the narrative goes that after the afternoon meal, she is sitting under the tree in Samadhi Mala, and to make her a victim of temptation and harass her, Mara calls her Daharatvam Rupavati, which may be translated as one who is young and beautiful in the sense of the adjective Vati. However, the word may be analyzed in a deeper sense and not just mere understanding of one who is young and beautiful and invites her to enjoy Panchagena Turiya, that means the fivefold music and ensemble. We need to understand these words, like Rupa can be also form. So basically, on a much more latent and symbolic basis, the Mara tries to ask her understanding of form, and the Panchagena Turiyana, that means the fivefold music ensemble, can be symbolized as her understanding of the five aggregates, the five skandhas. Though here by the parameter of very superficially, it refers to physical beauty as symbolized by the terms Rupavati, like, which can also be depicted as a challenge posed by the evil one before her, as on her understanding of Akara, because going by the forms of, by the other synonyms of form, which is a much objectified sense. The Bhikkhuni very tactfully denies adhering to the sensual experience, rejecting form, taste, odor, sound, and tactile objects. The basic adherence is to the teachings of no self and making the mind understand the nature of dependent origination, thereby curbing grasping of any false illusionary view. it is very much necessary to recognize that Mara, not as any physical human or maybe any other non-human intervention, but merely the self-doubt and self-introspection that a natural mind may encounter. The question of introspection and the right meaning of a teaching for the turbulent materialistic world full of temptation is symbolized by the Mara. For the right development, we need to explore the similarities between Rupa and Akara in the Buddhist metaphysical context. It is significant to understand that a form or shape which is in the cognitive view may be understood as an aspect of mental imagery. Also, if we take a deeper look into the phenomenon of conceptualizing Rupa, it must never be confused with the definition of an object of the physical body of a flesh, as it is an external agency meant to fade away with time, and example of impermanence, which is perceived as beautiful in the next stage is a foul corpse down the line. The Buddha, in his teachings of no self, has advocated not to hold any view of attachment to form to be it in a sensation or consciousness devoid of any time and space, be it past, present, or future, or be it external or internal. The reflections of the same philosophy is viewed in the reply of Bhikkhuni Vajira, and there is a certain shift from acceptance to negation of the phenomenon. The certain shift of the dualistic reflection to ultimate non-duality is the emptiness we are trying to perceive. The most important point she mentions is that those who perceive form and also the formless are sort of both peaceful attainments. In this case, I am relying on the translations of Bhikkhu Bodhi. She does not reject form at the first instance. Rather, she admits it as a view that one may develop, but the right path of Dhamma and a clear understanding of the non-existence of the self will lead us to the non-dualistic view, where form does not matter at all. There is a certain shift in which she proves her wisdom by accepting her human limitations. This now, it can be also, it's definitely recorded that when we try to even empower ourselves or we try to improve ourselves, the first step is accepting of our own limitations. So the canopy, to me, is the load of question in her mind, trying to rectify or question her own being. And Mara may be a sense of inner defilement. I have already talked about this, that this in fact can be seen as one of the most beautiful teachings of early form of emptiness by one Bhikkhuni. Since we do not have this, it's a rare case. Now I move on to the next part, that is Bhikkhuni Soma. She also tries to give a similar response to the evil one. And also, if we take a look at now talking about little bit about the Rupa Sutta on forms, where the Blessed One mentions that with regard to form, that all are subject to change and very much inconsistent. He rejects all sorts of senses and tangible and intangible attributes related to any sort of form, and thereby, in a similar manner, all sorts of phenomena. The aspects that need an in-depth discussion in this regard is to see no self and completely not to resort any false or speculative views often termed as michchadhati. In the early Theravadin view, it is quite complex phenomenon to understand the view of emptiness just based on illusionary views, but a better, inclusive and realistic approach would be to judge the aspect of emptiness in the context of desire, attachment and conditioning. Here, the advancement of the evil king Mara itself can be understood in the context of clinging on to the five aggregates, and the Mara itself may be considered as a moment of weakness and doubts that is natural for human mind and may happen. In light of the above, now I again come back to the reply of Bhikkhuni Soma, where Mara taunts her that this state is so hard to achieve, which is to be attained by the seers, can be attained by a woman with a two-fingered wisdom. Such a derogatory statement. Why he talks about this two-fingered wisdom? Because usually it's about the thread, the usual occupation in maybe early India, or checking the rice, whether it's limiting such the functions to household. The Bhikkhuni has herself prepared by wearing the robes in the morning and going for the alms round in the city of Savatthi, And in the afternoon, she sits in the dark forest. I will try to make you understand the symbolism of this dark forest. And prepares to meditate, which has a deeper symbolic meaning. The verses also mention the word Ajjogaveta, which means going deeper under a tree, while meditation is symbolized by the word, and the tree root is symbolized by the word Rukkhamule. Now, what is this Rukkhamule? In a superficial sense, you can say that she was sitting under the tree. But what is this? Root means she is trying to ponder upon the root causes of sufferings. The dark forest is the confusions. She is trying to ask herself or contemplate on her understandings again, because this internal process is very much necessary for self-transition. The inner insecurities and false minds are natural to create panic and fear in the mind of any living being. Mara declares the state of awakening to be very challenging, which means overcoming, that she needs to overcome the forms and developing a non-attachment to the self, as well as the right view does not exist, because that's also an attachment. It is a fluid concept that keeps on shifting, that because what is right and what is wrong, like to the emotions of mind. The Mara, the symbolic embodiment of the inner defilement, keeps on questioning one's self-worth, potential and capability, and gives us a derogatory remark on women, as they only know, according to Mara, how to cook rice or how to stitch using threads. It's a symbol of introspection and the limitation that one holds on our potential. We also question our potential, right? We work on that and then we also advance in career. Everyone else probably. The same is a very simple thing that we need to understand. However, Bhikkhunis overcomes the challenge by replying to the fact that biology or sex has nothing to do with the potential of awakening, provided the knowledge keeps on flowing and realization of the wisdom happens in the right way, without clinging to any form, sex, physical attributes, etc. The further in-depth answer of Bhikkhuri Soma happens, she mentions the fact that it is required to define gender or put an identity under the polarized view of man or woman. She teaches the world in a moment that the potential of the non-existent self and the identity of the non-dual awareness and consciousness that may be termed as emptiness, given the trajectory of the early Buddhist teachings, is hence proved that how they negate the forms and how they, through their own contemplation, they go on beyond the perceptions of gender, and how, if you see now Mara as a question or a total societal force, and themselves being the feminine principle. So a male, I won't say authority, but rather a machismo tries to instigate her and tries for a validation of her understanding. Now, she here in this case is herself the embodiment of emptiness, because she connects to her own being, the mind, just the mind, and mind has no gender. And beautifully expresses that how she does not cling on to the views of man or woman or any understanding of biased views. That's how, the interesting fact of this teaching is that how these Bhikkhunis developed such excellent faculties of teaching and expression on deep philosophical thought systems, where there are hardly any records of Bhikkhunis receiving direct teachings of the Buddha himself, except Mahapajapati Gautami. This in turn proves that the potential of women to achieve higher states of spiritual awakening, and there is no doubt that arahatis and perfectly realized ones definitely have perfected the attachment of non-dualistic views. They have defined their identity through their moral wisdom into supreme state of consciousness, the pure form of emptiness, where man or woman does not matter, but only realizations matter. These two cases of Bhikkhuni Samyutta makes us rethink and reanalyze the negative portrayal of women in the early Pali Canon, according to Bhikshu Analeo. And the last aspect that must be kept in mind to the end of this argument is that Mara over here may or may not symbolize the male machismo or male ego. Rather, it may be also a genderless state of mind, insecurities, defilements that occur in every mind naturally and can be skillfully be overcome through non-attachment to any views and development of the non-dual wisdom. Thank you.